So classic is the older form for editor. Let me go this direction. Classic is the older form. It's where it have one sheet on at a time, whereas the new editor form will allow you to bring up multiple forms in there. So in my mind, it's more user friendly.
The new form.
Yeah. So we're going to go into new forms, right?
Yeah,
So
I use that.
so I really like this one. So if you look at here, and I just want to say good morning to everyone in Zoom land. I have Anastasia and Deborah and Brianna and Adriana, Denise, Heather, and it looks like Daniel. Good morning, everyone. How are you? I'm gonna
Good morning.
try to maneuver. You know, if I could redo this with Zoom and move this thing around, I would love that. But if you look on here, over on the side, it has the purchase agreement, but you can come over here and punch in add, and then go to your forms library, and you can add.
Are we supposed to see something? Sorry, Ed. I don't think I'm seeing anything. I don't know if anybody else is. I see a blank white screen.
You
It's
do.
fine.
Well, thank you for saying that.
I see Ed.
Let's go back to here. Can you see this? Can you see the purchase agreement?
Yes.
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 Okay. Now, can you see where my cursor's over add?
Yes.
Okay. So I can go on to add. You guys see add a form or document? No.
Yes,
Okay,
we
so
see that.
Okay, you do. Then if you do that, you can go under form libraries and you can type in, let's just say, let's type in an addendum, right? So you can put an addendum, add an addendum to here, and automatically from the California Residence Purchase Agreement, the addendum's added, right? So now as I'm moving through and scrolling through different pages, this will be at the bottom.
Where is the other one?
Go out of it, come back in. Cool. Yep.
Oh, that's cool. Right.
Yeah, I really like this. And then when I go to send for signature, I can send it all in one. Right. The other thing that I can do is on add is I can come over here to upload. So say I've taken the tax records and I want to include this with the offer or the MLS active sheet. I can now come in here and I've saved it onto my desktop. I can come into my own files and pull that in and bring it into this document. Make sense?
I don't even know why they have the other one.
Well, this is new, but a lot of people just don't like change, right? So they go through this. So, but today, I'm trying to move that away. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the residential purchase agreement. So from who is comfortable with the residential purchase agreement, who is not comfortable with the residential purchase agreement? Okay,
I'm comfortable with it, but I have a quick question actually.
Yeah.
Because I haven't done this in a long time. When you're submitting a backup offer, isn't there a specific form or no? That comes from the seller?
There is a specific form that's at the end. It would be backup offer addendum, and you would include the residential purchase agreement, and then do the backup offer addendum, which would have, and you would essentially like a counter offer, but it's not. It would be, I'm submitting this offer to be in backup position.
Okay, if I have a client that just filled out everything on the RPA, can I just have them complete an addendum and then just send it all together to the seller?
The backup offer addendum?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
thanks.
but you have to connect the two, right?
Yeah, like it'll be addendum to the purchase agreement date at this
Yep.
date, right? Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
All right. So when we look at the California Residential Purchase Agreement, the RPA, right? RPA is that will be included. So those are not ones that we take out. It's actually to be included all in one part, right? So the first form that comes up is the agency relationship. So the agency relationship talks about our fiduciary duty. Our fiduciary duty, you look at right here, it says a fiduciary duty of the utmost care, integrity, honesty, and loyalty in dealing with the seller. Right? The fiduciary, the way I heard an attorney say it is like that from a mother to a child, right? That care that you provide from a mother to a child. That is what your fiduciary duty is to your client for their financial interests, right? So you have to look out for their interests more than yours when it comes to a transaction. It also says that to the other party, diligent exercise of reasonable skill and care and performance of the agent's duties, a duty of honest and fair dealings in good faith, and a duty to disclose all material facts affecting the value or the desirability of the property of things that you know or should have known. All right, so an example of should have known is seller selling property does a rehab of the bathroom, and in that rehab of the bathroom they put new sheetrock in, and so they tore it down to the studs, right? Makes the bathroom all nice and pretty. Well, seller or buyer comes in and looks at, they like change the exterior siding, and they notice that there's been significant pest damage, and that they would have known about it had they done the repairs, which they did. So it's almost like they covered it up, right? So that is something that they probably should have seen in that process. Maybe not even the seller themselves, but maybe the seller's contractor. Make sense? Buyer agent owes the same duty to the buyer and the same duty to the seller of reasonable skill, honest and fair dealings, and operating in good faith, and that we owe to each other the same duties, right? So right now, if you have a dual agency, it's two people operating in the same office, right? So Mark, you represent the seller. Bree, you represent the buyer, right? You owe a fiduciary duty to your buyer and seller, but because you're in the same office, you actually owe the same fiduciary duty to the other party, right? Because sub-agent of the broker has the listing, the broker has the buyer. That makes sense? So it's important to note that. Any questions here on agency? Our next form is fair housing and discrimination. So there's all kinds of different laws and statutes that say that, that say we cannot discriminate against protected classes. Here are the protected classes: race, color, ancestry, national origin, religion, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, marital status, family status, citizenship, immigration status, primary language, veteran status, source of income, medical condition, disability, genetic information, criminal history that's not related to that specific property, and any arbitrary characteristic. So that's a pretty wide group. So that makes sense, right? Right. So let me ask this though, because I think it's easy to cross this line on there. What's an example of an area where we could easily cross this line? Criminal history, right? What would be an example? Do you know? What's an example that we potentially could just registered sex offender, right?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
Yeah, so a registered sex offender could be someone, but is it our duty to? It is our duty to actually go out and find if they're a registered sex offender. It's not our duty, right? And so, if we know about it, then we have to disclose, right? If we know about it, we're bound to disclose that, right? That's not our duty to go and search. That's why I say don't go on Megan's Law looking for your client, because when you find that out, you have to disclose, right? How about age? Right? Very easy to discriminate against age. What's one way?
Well, I had a
Say it again?
person tell my buyers that the neighborhood that they were buying in was really for older retired people, and they had a family. My clients had a family, but or it's like as if we're like gearing toward, oh, well, I don't know if you really want to buy this house because it's mostly old people who live here.
Yeah.
Or
Or
that's a family thing, I guess, but or vice versa. Telling
well, I
an
mean,
older
I would agree, right? Or hey, this person's on a walker and assuming that they don't want second story properties.
Mhm.
I mean, I think that'd be fair and reasonable for me, but we can't assume that. How about someone saying, I want to live in the good part of town?
That is
Who's
the
ever
hard.
received something like
That
that?
is so challenging. I always hear that.
So,
I want to live in
yeah,
a good
so
neighborhood. I want my kids to go to a good school.
yeah. So how do we respond to that?
Well, tell me what do you mean? Tell me what you mean by that.
Yeah. What does that mean to you? And then they say, well,
Well,
it
you know
means,
the crime rate. The crime rate.
okay. So how do we respond to that?
Well, you can go to the contact the police and ask them for the crime records for this area
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
a crime website.
So we give them resources, right? So, hey, are you aware of school accountability reports? Have you seen crime statistics in the area? Right? Are there things that we can do to help you get through that process? What what is what nature of crime is you know if you look at it, there's probably crime happening everywhere. So what type of crime are you talking about? Let's go on the crime statistics and get a crime statistics report. That way you can figure out what area you want to live in or not. Right? We cannot steer you one direction or another.
Okay, I often find myself saying that to people
Yeah.
because I feel like they're like, well, you know what I mean, or you know what I'm talking about. And then I just say that, well, as a realtor, I can't guide you in any direction because I'm not steering. So you just have to be specific and I can answer questions for you that I know the answers to or direct you to research.
Right. Another one that we see oftentimes is writing a buyer's letter. Right. I have a buyer's letter, and in that letter, I want to show you how excited I am to buy your house and my cute little family, right, with the cross on my necklace is right here, and I'm going to show you. So, number one, the picture of the family, which probably alludes to race, religion, right, and then family. So we have all different potential violations that are coming there. So if I recommend, if you're going to submit a buyer's letter, submit a buyer's letter that talks about their motivation, about what the buyers love about the property. Right? So it's a very fine line. We just say don't do them because it's very easy to cross that line, right? So if you're going to do it, say Matt and Rebecca, right? Matt and Rebecca are very interested in buying your property, right? They're super motivated. They're highly qualified. They've been watching this property for quite a long time, right? They've seen this, and that in the property, and they absolutely love it, right? Provide a professional transaction. And there. What I even suggest or recommend even more is as the agent, we do it, right? Our clients are super excited, highly motivated, right? Highly qualified. I promise from my side, a professional transaction with communication and free of drama. Boom, right? So then we circumvent that, that ceases to be an issue. Possible representation of seller. It says we work with multiple buyers, we work with multiple sellers, right? That we, from time to time, provide dual agency. And the last part, offer is not necessarily confidential. Means that we can disclose the terms, existence, or condition of the buyer's offer. Where you submit an offer, I can say to the seller, to the other agent in here, that I do have one offer. It's at asking, or it's at 325,000 right there. And so now you have known existence of this offer. But what do I have to do if someone else asks for that? Provide the same information, right? Now, Bree, I have an offer at 330, right? So now I have to come back and just let you know that if we had another offer in hand, right?
But if you tell them what, let's say you say they have an offer at 330 and it falls through, then they know that they would accept 330 in the future.
You don't have to do this,
Okay.
right? You can do this. And that's what offers not necessarily confidential. You can, right? In order to get them to not do that, the seller would have to submit a written confidentiality agreement. Wire fraud and electronic fund transfer advisory. Realty One Group, we do not take funds. We won't be asking for funds. We don't take initial deposits. It's in our policy. We don't want anything to do with it. So everything will go from that buyer to the escrow company, or from the seller to the escrow company, vice versa, right? We are not party to that. So I would just let our clients know that we will never ask of that. If anything comes across, we'd like to confirm it with the party. So I receive an email. I don't directly reply to that. I make a phone call to a known number. I have a link. Is this a valid link, right? Is this where I should be wiring the money? Yes, and let them connect. This is a new form that we have right now. Buyer homeowners insurance advisory. So who has, this just gives also, you should be online if you have your zip forms on templates. Make sure that you're working off of the latest purchase agreement as of 12/23.
The templates don't auto update, Ed?
I would confirm that.
Okay.
Mhm.
Are they just the same thing?
I think they are, but the period will put it at the top, right? So just for homeowners insurance in California, homeowners insurance has been challenging. So make sure that you are seeking homeowners insurance. It can direct your purchase ability. Now let's jump into the California Residential Purchase Agreement and joint escrow instructions, right? So this is a valid agreement between two parties. Who are the parties? Seller, buyer, right? Who are not parties to this? Realtors, the agents, right? The broker, the escrow officer, the lender, right? None of us are party to it other than the buyer and seller. So here we have the date prepared, important, right? This is an offer from Mr. I am buyer, and the property address of 123 Main Street in Vacaville, County of So Solano, state of California, and that is 95688. All right. So we have the address. What's more important than the address? The parcel number. Why?
It's the final, say what the property is.
Yeah. Right. So I could potentially have a wrong address, right? But the APN is the one that's going to transfer the property, right? So true story, Kara doing a transaction, the escrow officer, or was escrow title officer, actually pays off the loan of a neighbor property. Wrong property. So actually completes the sale of a wrong property. So this is very important to have this. Who knows how to find this information?
I think it's even in the MLS, but it's also on the one of those what is it, RPR, like it's when we go on berries, there's lots of different things that shows us
Yep.
where it's at.
Also under
APN.
tax.
Yeah.
Under tax. Okay, so I'm just going to pause real fast and come back to, I think it's maybe that one. Yes. All right. So let's just pull up. And let's do one of these properties. Claudia's property right now. Can you guys see Claudia's property?
Yes.
Okay. So you see right here the listing. So you can go through, scroll down. This number right here is the APN. Right? If I were to click on that, it would take me to the tax roll. Whenever I submit an offer, I'd like to get a copy of this as well as the MLS active. Right?
Have you ever seen that be wrong when you clicked on it, go, wait, that's not property?
I think I have. But generally that's probably an input error.
Right. I was just wondering how often that's wrong.
I mean, if your hand, that's why I also do the assessors, when we're inputting it into the system, I'm pulling it from the system rather than, so I'll go off the address, pull it from the MLS so that it's auto populates and I'm not having to fat finger it.
Okay.
All right. So APN is very, very important. All right. We look on paragraph 2, agency talks about automatically about our agency requirements. The seller's firm will have their information there. The buyer's broker's firm will have their information there. The agent and the agent license numbers. So
You know those boxes, right?
yep. So let's just say let's say Remax is one, and it's like bad agent. Sorry. Let me just take off Remax because that's not nice. Bad broker. All right, better. All right, so the seller represented there, we are representing the buyer, right? So we would check those two boxes. If it was both the same company, then we would click this box. Okay. And then license numbers. This is ours. When you complete this through when you're opening this up, it'll actually show an auto populate on the form. Just make sure that if you looked at Realty One Group Fox, my license comes up as the broker. So sometimes we'll see my license that come up, but actually the correct broker number is it's our corporate license at 0200 1870. Oops. And then we'll have the purchase price. Today we're going to buy it for 600,000. Right. If I'm buying all cash, I would check this box. That'd be great. But today I need some financing. So we're going to say that our financing, the loan and everything, we can get this completed in 21 days after acceptance. So if we're taking a look at this, what does this mean to us? If we submit our offer today and it gets accepted today, when is day one? Why?
It's already started, and it's already.
Yeah, because if you look at this, it says 21 days after acceptance, right? So after acceptance, today is day 0, right? I submit an offer today, it gets accepted tomorrow. What is tomorrow's day 0, correct? Right?
Next day.
So the next day, Wednesday, would be day 1, right? That's important because we need to know what's our timeline because this is a contract. Okay. This offer expires if we don't do anything else to it in 3 calendar days. So can it expire on a Saturday or Sunday?
Yes. Ed, could you explain the day one again?
Yes, absolutely. So day 1. So let's look at if I'm looking at and submitting an offer today. So if you look at the close of escrow, it says days after acceptance, right? I submit an offer today and it's accepted today. 21 days after acceptance, right? It's accepted today. So after acceptance tomorrow would be day 1.
Tomorrow would be day one. Okay,
Right?
Yep.
The example I just gave, just kind of make it a little bit more confusing, right? Submit an offer today, it gets accepted tomorrow.
Then
Right?
the next
Tomorrow is still day 0.
day. Right.
Wednesday would be day 1.
Thank you.
And what if it's a holiday? Thursday would be
Does-
day 1.
That doesn't matter for the start of the timeline. That does not matter. The end of the timeline, that does matter.
Copy.
And we'll talk about that. Expiration of offer. So without doing anything, 3 calendar days after all buyer signatures. Right. So if I look up here, I have January 29, right? We write the offer, we send it to the buyer today, but the buyer signs it tomorrow, right? This is saying this expires 3 days after all buyer signatures. So tomorrow would be day 0, Wednesday would be day 1, right? So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday after, so Saturday morning with the date.
Okay, so even with the buyers, it's still that day is 0, and it doesn't start till the following day.
After acceptance, right? You have to, or after, right?
Buyers sign the offer, and that's day 0.
Correct.
Okay,
And you submit it.
you submit it that day, so that's still 0 for the offer.
Mhm.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Now, initial deposit. This is something that is a negotiated amount. Whatever you want. I see customarily 1 to 3% is a general number. 1 to 3%. Right? So different areas will have an increased initial deposit. It used to be called the earnest money deposit, EMD. right? So we could say, I want to make a really strong offer. Oops. I'll learn how to multiply 18,000. So we're coming in with 3%, coming in strong, right? So my initial deposit is at 18,000, or I'm sorry, my client's initial deposit is 18K. Yes, sir.
Does that fall if it's all cash offer? That come into play?
That does come into play. The question is, if there's an all cash offer, would this come into play? And the answer is yes.
When you
Right.
put that 18,000 in, the 3% automatic.
It automatically populates. Yes.
That's
Yeah. The question is, if you put the dollar amount here, does it automatically populate? The answer is yes.
That 1 to 3%, is that pretty much the same? Because we do business all over Northern California.
Yeah. So I would say in Solano County, and anyone who's been writing offers, what are you seeing? I would say 1% is pretty standard, and I would go off of that to increase and or decrease from that.
Like Napa, when I did the deal in Napa last year, they required 3%. Contra Costa is hit or miss, either 1 or 2. San
Yeah.
Francisco, definitely 3.
Napa's
So,
stuff.
yep, just depends on where you're at, right? And what's generally accepted or not. So thing that you need to hear about or see about this is you look over in this corner. So this is due within 3, what does that say? Business days. 3 business days. That's Monday through Friday, right? So seller accepts our offer on Thursday. When is the EMD due or the initial deposit due? So
Tuesday?
what's that? Tuesday, correct. Then 3 business days.
What about like federal holidays?
Federal holidays considered a weekend. So then it would be Wednesday, right? And right now it is standard by wire transfer unless otherwise agreed. Increased deposit. We don't see this too much right now, but a time where you would start to see this is maybe you have a longer escrow. I have a 90-day escrow, and in order to incentivize the seller to take it off the market for a period of time, then they could. So, okay, after we remove our contingencies, we're going to come in with an additional amount. Maybe my initial part was 1%, right? Or maybe it was still 3%. I can come in with this increased deposit and there to help incentivize the seller and say, we are operating in good faith and we want to continue to move forward with this. And so we're offering an additional amount that if we were to fall in breach of contract would be up for potential loss. Questions on that? Okay, so let's move down to 3E1, loan amounts. Right. It is automatically assumed that the loan is conventional unless something else is checked, FHA, VA, seller financing, or something else. Right. So what are some percentages that a buyer can do to purchase a property? What for down payments?
20.
Let's talk conventional first, but you're correct. So 20% I heard? Yes. Right. Is there any other amounts that are from conventional that they'll take? 3%.
Conventional financing,
5%.
yeah, 3%.
10%.
Yeah, 5%. Yeah.
3, 5, 10%. So this is where you are working in conjunction with the lender, right? And saying, what is our client? What's their down payment that we're coming in at? Right. So if everyone can bring out their calculators. So we have a $600,000 loan, right? And then we want to do a 20% down the question is, this is back to high school word problems. What is our loan amount if I'm putting 20% down? How did you find that number?
The amount times 20.
So here's a way that I do it. It works for me. Maybe it'll work for you. So if I have the loan amount of 600,000, right? And then I go multiply it times 80%, which is going to be the loan amount. So times 0.8 comes up with 480, right? So 600,000 times 0.8. So I can work that just about for any loan that I'm working on. So 600,000, and now I'm going to do 3% down times 0.97. 97% is my loan amount. 582. Make sense? You should be able to figure, or you should at least be able to navigate this. Okay. Let's talk now. I'm going FHA. What is FHA's loan amount?
3.5.
3.5. Yes, correct. 3.5%. So if I have 3.5%, my purchase price is 600,000. What is my loan amount? So the way I'm going to factor this,
97.5.
I'm sorry.
97.5.
Yes. Yes. No. 96.
No, it's 96.5. Yeah, 96. I said that and I knew that was wrong. And I'm like, why is that wrong? Okay. 96.5.
Yeah. So 600,000 is the sales price or the purchase price, right? And then I'm going to find out what 96.5% which would equal our loan amount, what that amount is, right? So the down payment is 3.5%. I'm finding out if I'm looking at a full 100%, what's the remaining? 3.5% is my down payment. My loan amount is going to be the other percentage left over. So if I took 100 minus 3.5, it equals 96.5. Make sense? Okay, good. And then that should equal 579,000. So for our purposes today, we're going to do FHA 579. Okay.
But wait, they got down payment assistance program.
That's a totally different piece right now. So when we get into that, come talk to us and we'll help you with that piece, right?
Oh, I've had a few of them.
Right. And they're fun, right? So there's all kinds of different things that come into play. That's where you're going to work with your lender, you're going to work with us and try to figure out the best way to write this. Okay. So in this, there's also some other forms that were things that we need to include, right? So one of them is not to exceed what percentage. So this is used for your loan contingency. If my FHA right now is at, let's just say 6%, but I want to give some wiggle room, but I don't want it to make it crazy. So I want the buyer to be able to back out of theory if they were unable to move forward, right? So 6.5%. And maybe I say buyer to pay up to 1 point to obtain the rate above, right? So if the rate moved, so today it's at 6%, but we don't lock it in, or the lender doesn't lock it in, and then it moves up to say 6.65, right? We've automatically crossed this threshold, but the buyer to pay 1 point, could they get it below that, and would does it meet that threshold? Does that make sense?
What you're basically saying that if you're the seller's agent and they put that, you're agreeing that your seller may end up paying another $300.
Buyer. This is on the buyer right
Oh,
now.
the buyers.
This
Oh,
is buyer. So what this really is saying is, this is for the loan contingency, right? I'm giving instructions, or the buyer is giving instructions on how they can cancel the agreement. If it falls outside of this threshold or beyond that threshold, then they can cancel the agreement. Maybe they don't have a lot of room, so maybe we need to get a little bit more aggressive, or there, maybe it's 0.25.
But you can leave that blank though, right?
It's purchased.
You can leave it blank. I recommend putting something in though. So. Wow, you okay?
Oh, yes. I didn't know I was not unmuted. Thank you.
Use that, so.
The commentary. All right. So we're not dealing with right now a lot of second loans on there. And there from time to time we will. If you do receive a second loan, this is where you would input that. As loans become more challenging, you'll see something like an 80-10-10, right? 80% loan, 10% second, 10% down payment. We used to see those a lot in the early 2000s. Occupancy type, primary. It's assumed that it's your primary occupancy, or secondary, or investment. So any idea what secondary is? Yeah.
Second.
So it's not an investment property. It's probably going to be viewed like as an investment, but from your rate purpose, but maybe not, and depend on all kinds of tax implications. And
Doesn't it have implications other than financing? I know it does on financing.
I think tax.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, tax. Yes.
Ed, would it be something like a summer rental?
So, are you saying a summer rental that you own? Is that what
Yes.
you're saying, Charles?
Yes.
So I think that may go into an investment property. That may cross that threshold, especially because if you're receiving investment income from it.
Okay.
I would ask specifically for that piece. I would say the secondary, if I could, it has to fall outside of a specific area. Like it cannot be within your primary area. It's my second home. Maybe I have a business in Solano County, and I also have a business in Fredericksburg, Virginia. I carry 2 homes on there. I split time between both. That may qualify.
I
Okay.
also put in the additional financed information right in there. I always put in, no. I put in, oh wait, if you go up,
Go down
no, go down. I mean, no,
Down.
the other way, sorry.
this way.
Yeah, I don't see what I'm looking for. Never mind, sorry. Never mind,
Okay.
sorry, I was reading something wrong.
Okay, so just now for our math, checking our math. I have a $600,000 sales price, initial deposit of 3%, 18,000, right? I have a loan amount of 579,000. So my balance of down payment is 3,000, right? So if I take my $3,000 and add it to 18,000, right? That should equal 21,000, right? If I were to take 6,000 or 600,000 times 0.035, 3.5%, it should equal 21,000. My math should check.
Is that gonna auto-populate?
It should auto-populate, but it's good to know the math so that you can confirm it. Any questions on that? Okay. 3G1 is seller credit. Right. So from time to time, you'll see that there is a seller credit. There it is. And what's to say that we're asking for 18K? Right. We're asking for 3%. So who do we need to talk to if we're asking for a credit? And what is a credit? Yes. So it's going to be towards the buyer's closing costs. Right. And generally the lender will say, you know, and you'd have to have a specific conversation, but 3%, 4%, 5%, 6% is the max credits allowed for this buyer. All right. This is going to be used for credit applied to closing costs. What else can it be used for?
Upgrades.
Buy downs, not upgrades. Not upgrades. You no. Unless, and very specifically, it would have to be included in there and would have to state that, and that invoice would have to go through, be paid out of escrow.
So if they
But
have
it
a
wouldn't
roof-
be through a credit, it'd generally be through the seller.
So if they needed the new heater as part of the deal, you couldn't ask for that as a credit.
You could ask that for that as a request for repairs. But that's generally not coming from the buyers as the buyer's closing costs. Right. So yes, you can do it. It wouldn't be coming from this specific point or part. Right. But things I could do is I could ask for a upgraded home warranty included on here. I could ask for to buy the rate down. That's one, right, that we're seeing today. Right. So I'm at 6.25, but I want to dip into the fives. Right. How do I get to the fives? That may be a way to do it. Additional finance terms. Here's where you can input anything specific about that. For instance, if I am going to ask for 18,000, maybe it is I'm asking for the credit to buy down that rate. G3 is a newer form that is included in our purchase agreement. Who's used 3G3 before?
Me?
Who's me? Deborah?
No, I'm just looking it up. Which one?
It's the SPBB, seller's payment to buyer's broker. Okay, so if you have a buyer's representation broker compensation agreement, and we want to disclose that the buyer has agreed to compensate us, right? And that there's an offer of compensation from the seller, we can marry those two together, right? So I'm going to use a fixed number. The seller has agreed to offer $15,000 for the co-op agent. The buyer's broker agreement has agreed to pay a $15,000 a compensation, right? We could utilize SPBB, seller payment buyer broker, saying, okay, that will be used to be satisfied the buyer's representation agreement. But it's just, then it's bringing it out in the open for everyone. Make sense? This is a form I think we need to spend a little time on because it's not the way we've been doing business. Yeah. Only if I have a buyer's representation agreement. Only if. Yeah. Well, no. On the broker representation agreement, there's a box there that says either share it with the seller or do not share it with, right? it's automatically assumed that it can be shared with the seller. But if it's marked to say, I do not agree to share this with other parties, then you would not include that.
So Ed, I have a question. This was
Mhm.
like an interesting thing that came up when Tim Jones was speaking to, some of our members about this, and people specifically brought up that this document, this purchase agreement has that box, and there is a NAR rule or policy, I don't have it written down, where you can't negotiate the you know what I'm talking about, where you can't negotiate the commission with the sellers, with the seller, the sales agent, the person who's selling the house. So I guess when you're clicking this, technically you're saying maybe you already agreed to a 6% commission. So I'm not asking you to give up any of yours. I'm just saying you need to renegotiate your commission to increase it if you're asking for more than what was in the MLS. Because people brought it up and he said, yeah, I know that's kind of weird that they allow you to do that, despite the fact that as realtors, we're not supposed to engage in conversations with someone who already has a contract for commission. Does that make sense to you?
Yes. So first off, not an attorney. The second part is this is coming from the Association of Realtors, right? CAR. Right. As Kara's mentioned, that is part of the lawsuit. The other thing I would say is that I don't think they're negotiating commissions inside of that. I think it's disclosing. It's
Like I'm saying,
disclosing.
like, what if they agreed in the MLS to pay 2.5 and then I agreed with my buyer to pay pay me 3%. So I'm submitting this and submitting my 3% request, right? Isn't that what that box is
No, it's
saying?
not a
No?
request to increase
Oh,
it. No. We're not negotiating commission here. We're not negotiating commission here. That's a disclosure.
oh, that's just saying it's just a disclosure. I see. It's just if you happen to have that buyer's broker agreement signed, that's
Yeah.
what that is.
Yep.
Okay, but if you have it signed, if you're requesting more than the MLS,
That falls back onto
anyway, I
your
don't want to
previous
get
agreement.
too technical. Yeah, okay.
That falls onto your agreement. So
I get it. Yep. I
the
think I
listing
understand now.
broker and the seller have an agreement,
Yep.
right? So listing
Mhm.
broker and the seller have an agreement. You as the buyer representative, you may have an agreement, which I'm going to recommend you do have an agreement, right? Those two don't have to marry, right? They don't have to equal the same. Okay. One can be higher, one can be lower. That's not what we're not trying to negotiate between those parties. The agreement is between the seller and the listing broker, right? And that listing broker cooperates with potentially with the buyer's broker, right? So that's where that piece comes into play. Suffice to say, I think there's a lot more information and training we need on this specific item, the buyer's representation, the anticipated broker compensation form, and how to disclose this, right? Because I think it's becoming more and more part of our business and it will continue to change. All right. 3H1, verification of all cash. If it is all cash, it's either attached to the offer or we can put in whatever days after acceptance. Verification of down payment and closing costs attached to the offer. In the past, it's always been, not always, in the past, it has been customary to see some type of proof of funds from that the buyer has the ability, like cash in the bank or some type of investment on there. I think it has also become largely, not wholly, but largely accepted that if you have a pre-approval letter that the lender has done and checked to see that they have the cash to close for the down payment and closing costs. 3H3, verification of loan application attached to the offer or within X amount of days. And now you have pre-qualification, pre-approval, fully underwritten pre-approval. What's the difference? So I received a letter from my bank, Wells Fargo. It says you are approved for $500,000 on there. Is that a pre-approval?
No.
What is it?
No, that's a
Pre-qualification, right?
pre-qualification.
They haven't gone
Pre-approval
through
is when
all
they do a hard credit pull, right?
a hard credit pool. They've taken your bank statements. They've seen your tax return. They looked at your job. They've gone into a little bit more detail. Actually, a lot more detail.
Has that been underwritten approval?
So that's one step further. So this is kind of tricky when you see a fully underwritten pre-approval. When I see a fully underwritten pre-approval, I'm thinking that it has gone through the underwriting process and essentially says you are approved, right? Not pre-approved, but approved on there. I think now you can go through a underwriting process that says, okay, for instance, we are 1099s, right? Our process of purchasing property is a little bit more challenging because you have to prove your income, right? Because you are your own and you have your own expenses. And oftentimes as a 1099 employee, you're trying to expense as much as you can through your company, right? So it'll show that you've made less money, right? So because you're going to pay for all of your taxes, right? You're paying for your company's share as well as yours, right? And that's what the benefit and drawback of being self-employed. So you'll have to go through some more scrutiny. 3J3 fair, geez. We're moving or not. Okay, final verification within 5 days after close of escrow. That means that when you have verification of the premises, that you're viewing the property in the same condition as when the offer was made, right? Same or similar condition. That means there's no more holes in the wall. There's all kinds of different things that are associated with that. Make sense? That all the repairs have been made. Assignment request. From time to time, you'll see that an investor will come in and say, I'm going to purchase this property, but I may assign it to another one. So I'm buying this property, but I'm going to assign it to Christian. Christian is going to be the person who closes on this property. Christian's going to take the terms that we've already agreed upon and take it. I have 17 days to assign it. Other contingencies that we may have, loan without change, loan contingency is 17 days. Appraisal is 17 days. Investigation of the property is 17 days. Informational access to the property is 17 days. So let's stop there for a second. Loan. What does that mean from a loan contingency standpoint? If I don't qualify to obtain financing, that's when I can use that. Does it mean that I don't have the down payment or closing cost money? No. Right? I cannot cancel or use that contingency because I don't have enough closing costs or the down payments.
For the loan contingency?
Yes.
I don't know, Ed. I would think you can. And the reason why I say that is because some lenders are not very good at and agents, like if we don't talk to our clients, I often meet people with $50,000 and say, I have $50,000 down, and they have no other money. And then
Yep.
they get into contract. I mean, I don't let them get into contract, but I feel like other people might. And they get into contract, and then when the lender says, oh, you need $10,000 worth of closing costs, then their loan doesn't qualify. So I think that is all a part of the loan.
Nope. Not at all. So you look right here, 8A, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you go to 8A. This agreement, unless otherwise specified in paragraph 3L1 or attached in contingency removal B form, contingent upon buyer obtaining the loan specified. If contingent, buyer shall act diligently in good faith to obtain the designated loan. If there is no appraisal contingency or the appraisal contingency has been waived or removed in failure of the property to appraise at the purchase price does not entitle buyer to exercise cancellation right pursuant to the loan contingency. If buyer is otherwise qualified for the loan and buyer is able to satisfy lender's non-appraisal conditions for the loan. Buyers of 3, buyer contractual obligation regarding deposit, balance of down payment, and closing costs are not contingencies of this agreement.
That is so interesting because technically the lender's not going to approve you if you don't have the closing costs. That's a weird thing to have in there, but thank you for pointing that out because clearly I didn't read that.
Right? So, I mean,
Interesting.
I find new things each time I go through this. The appraisal, same, right? It has to come in at the value, right? So oftentimes what happens there, Rihanna, is maybe there's a loan contingency that's in place and you'll often cancel because of the investigation, right? So that's, there's some, so you can cancel for almost any reason, right? So but you can't just say, I don't want the property anymore. You have to say, no, let's describe that a little bit more. Why don't you want the property? I don't like the busy street. I don't like the smells. I don't like the wires overhead. I don't like the soils. I don't like, there's so many different reasons it was too noisy at night, too noisy in the morning, whatever, right? So those are generally the reasons why we see that's our canceling. In fact, if you are canceling, that would be a reason for me to say, don't go into too much detail for the cancellation. Utilize 14B of the agreement. Buyer is choosing to cancel per 14B of the residential purchase agreement, which is their right to cancel. You don't have to explain to the other party why they're canceling, especially if it's going to be contested. Informational access to the property. What does that mean? This is not a contingency, right? But this gives you, I need to check for the, I want to go check the width of the room or measure the room for carpet or see what paint or the lighting or so forth. Reviewer of seller documents, 17 days. Prelim, 17 days. Common interest disclosure, 17 days. Review or leased or liened items, 17 days. This is important for if they have a Hero or a Pace or some type of solar liens on there. This is where you do that. And then sale of buyer's property. If you have a sale of the buyer's property, you need to check this in order for it to be contingent with that purchase agreement. Yes.
So over on the CRB form, why do you have a CRB form box to check? And then also no loan contingency, no appraisal contingency. Would you check no loan contingency and the CRB, or would you check one or the other?
Yeah, contingency remover buyer, right? So I would, if I had no loan or no appraisal, I would also include the contingency removal.
So you check all three.
I would.
Okay, just to be.
If I'm removing one of them, I would check the B. But you just have to make sure that you're not removing all the contingency. You're removing the contingency you're talking about.
Specify.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Time of possession. So the sale happens at the time it's recorded. When you get notice, that's when the actual title transfers to the new owner. If you do have an occupied property, or I'm sorry, this is that's the next one. Seller occupied. So if you're going to remain in the property after the close of escrow, there's two different types: seller in possession or a lease after the. What's the difference between the two? Yep, 29 days or less, SIP, seller in possession, right? 30 days or more is the residential lease after sale. What's
Yeah.
that distinguishing factor? Why?
Can I share one question? Sorry, I just want to bring this up because I feel like I keep bringing this up and nobody really has dealt with it. But I always get very concerned when especially now that we're dealing with insurance questions. If you purchase a home and for the first 29 days you're not living in it, do you have homeowners insurance, and if the house catches on fire, is the insurance company going to cover that house fire or not? Or if you go into 30 days. I feel like nobody ever talks about that. And I don't know, I feel like that's something that's going to happen one day and somebody is going to make the wrong decision and not that house isn't going to be covered, especially with all the tight insurance guidelines. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring up.
I don't have an
They're
answer for that. That's an answer for an insurance company.
Yeah.
Our question. What's the difference though between SIP and RLAS? Why is it a seller in possession rather than a lease? Yeah, why? What's specific about that one day? Keep going.
Because once you're in possession 30 days.
It creates what? A tenancy relationship, right? You become a tenant, right? So 29 days or less, it's a short-term rental, right? So then there's no tenancy established on there. So 29 days compared to 30, that's why it's a license to remain in the property rather than a lease. Okay, 29 days. So 3M3 occupied units, if you are purchasing a property or writing an offer on a property that has tenants in place, you need TOPA, tenant occupied property addendum. You can either ask for the tenants to be removed at the close of escrow, or you can accept the tenants in place, and then there will be a full transfer of the information. But that buyer will be assuming the any of the the agreements in place, as well as if they have to remove the tenant or anything like that. So it's important that they have that, and TOPA covers that. Seller has 7 days after acceptance to give all the disclosures, right? One of the disclosures is on us, the agent visual inspection disclosure. Hey, Kara, come here, please. Please. Will you take that? Okay. Seller has 7 days to do that. And then 5 days to submit the EMD. 3 days to pay for ordering all the HOA docs, homeowners association documents, right? Generally, if it's written into the purchase agreement, generally the escrow officer will do that. But we need to confirm that is the seller or listing broker's responsibility to make sure that is completed, or the person who's paying for it. 7 days after acceptance for install smoke alarms, water heater double braced. And 3 days after to evidence representative authority.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
This mean on the install smoke alarms and CO detectors, is there a law as far as how many per square foot of the house?
Yeah, so, and I'd have to check again, but smoke detectors, I believe, have to be in every room. Yeah, in every room, like the hallway. So yeah, essentially. And then carbon monoxide needs to be in every living on every level in between living areas. So if I had a kitchen and then bedrooms on both sides of that, I would potentially need 2 CO detectors to cover to be compliant, right? All right, so 3P, items included or excluded. Here's where you're gonna include all that. One of the things that I always do is I will just generally say as per MLS, right? Making sure that if they state something in the purchase agreement, that it's going to be conveying with. Stoves generally will convey. Do refrigerators usually convey with the sale, transfer with the sale? No, Parker, no. I'm sorry, I was agreeing with you, Parker. The refrigerators are negotiable. Washer and dryers are generally negotiable, but they don't automatically transfer. Any item specifically excluded, state here, and then allocation of costs. So let's go over some customary fees. So in Solano County, and if you have a question, go online to check out who pays what, right? Who pays escrow and title fees in or customary expenses for closing in Solano County. For natural hazard disclosure, the seller generally pays for that. If you're putting that there, you can put whatever company you prefer to use or your client prefers to use. So this is newer, the wildlife service provider. What's that? Wildlife service provider. So this is a newer report. Fortress wildfire disclosure, or it's not applicable. So if you're in a high fire hazard area, and then I have not seen it come across our desk yet.
Wouldn't that be provided by the MHD?
Are you sure, Kara? So I'm getting reports that it's not required. I haven't seen it. Carly has said she has seen it. And we'll come back to you and say whether or not. Seller is generally pays for a smoke alarm, CO detector, water heating, double braces secured. For 3Q, 5, and 6, government required point of sale inspection reports as well as corrective and remedial actions. That is generally not marked if you were to do that. I would recommend reading 10A and 10B because that kind of you're agreeing to, or the other party is agreeing to repairs that may happen in the future. No, not necessarily. I'll jump to it. I'll show you. For escrow fees, in general, the person who is directing it pays for it. In Solano County, though, escrow fee is generally paid for by the buyer, and the owner's title insurance policy is generally paid for by buyer. It can be negotiated. This is not a hard and fast rule.
19B, escrow fee. I don't understand. I'm struggling with the difference between both. The difference.
Okay. So escrow fee is an owner's title insurance policy. I'm on there. It's by county, really. It's like if you go up to Sacramento County, it's different than Solano County, right? If you went to San Diego County, it'd be different there too, right? So you have to check what is customary in that area, and that's generally who pays for it. Escrow fee is the fee from the escrow company. For a $600,000 home, you're going to pay $750, something like that. Right around that $750 to $1,000. For owner's title insurance policy, this is it's essentially an insurance that there's no additional liens on the property, and then that buyer is paying for it, making sure that so they have some insurance for if there is a lien that's not somehow recorded, and it happens from time to time. that's not recorded, that they have the insurance that would be picking that up. So from our side, we always recommend that someone pays the title insurance.
But
Escrow,
what's the difference between both and each pay? I mean, isn't that the same thing? Both and each pay?
Yeah. So, I asked the title company the same question. They didn't have an answer. Mhm.
So it's a try to stay away from that.
No, I mean, we've seen it. And I think if they say each pay their own, there's generally something followed up with, like they'll ask for an addendum to specify what that actually means. Right. I think what happens is agents don't know. And so they say, okay, well, everyone pays their own share. And then the escrow officer will come back and say, well, what does that mean?
so, I did sit in on like a, I don't know, there were like 5 or 10 escrow officers, giving a presentation, and they said they hate when we check that box because there's only one fee. And they said either say 50% or say, buyer or seller, but there's only one fee. There's only one fee. That's what they said. So when you check that box, it's always ambiguous and they always have to go back and ask us. So if we could clarify either right in there, 50% or buyer or seller. And if anybody requests from the escrow companies, they have a list of what's customary in all the counties.
Mhm.
If you guys want that info.
But you recommend the Solano County, this would be buyer.
Well, I'm saying customary. I don't recommend. That's negotiable. Right.
ORTC also has, on the computer, if you type in the county and the price, it'll tell you who pays
Right.
buyer or seller on the escrow and the title and all that. It's very helpful.
So if you go on to like ORTC online, it'll yeah. Kara, what were you gonna say?
It says, she said the Fortune fire report is not required.
So Lisa Visa saying the Fortress Fire report here is not required. Let me ask this question. How often do we see something come on this forum? There's probably a reason that this is coming on here, right? So I think that if you're in a fire hazard area, this may be something that an additional disclosure that you on there. But I think we need more education on that. All right. Q10, 3Q10, seller generally pays in Solano County transfer tax. In Solano County, city transfer tax generally falls on seller. What's the only city that has city transfer tax in Solano County? Vallejo. Right. So it only applies to Vallejo for us right now. If you're outside of that, then what I would do is again go and check with the title company. They have customary who pays for what. Or if you're wondering if they have a transfer fee, it will disclose that there as well. If you have questions, come see me or call me. HOA fee for preparing disclosures, the seller pays that. The certification fee is buyer. The transfer fee generally falls on seller. It is, again, all of this is negotiable. Private transfer fees, if any. And here's your home warranty. That's completely negotiable. If you leave it blank, then and your client wants to waive it, then I would recommend waiving it right there. Any terms that you're going to include in there, for instance, you're selling your own property. Buyer agent is buyer, right? You're disclosing that you are the person representing yourself, kind of thing, or you're representing a family member, or property is being sold as is, whatever it is that you would like to see. Here's an opportunity where you get to, so you notice we just moved out of the grid. Everything all these numbers right here, all these numbers are then talked about in follow-on or subsequent paragraphs. So anything that we're including in there, if I have tenant occupied property, TOPA, that's where that would be marked, or if it's a manufactured home or whatever, all that's been in here. Brianna, for your backup offer addendum, here's where you would include that here.
Okay. All right, I forgot to check
Right.
that box. Thank you.
If you're dealing with country property, septic well, property monument and propane addendum here. Well, if the property is held in a trust, REO is bank owned, like a foreclosure. If it's a short sale or probate. Right, so any of the forms included here, and then all these beyond here are all talking about that grid that we just went through, right? So when we talk about the initial deposit or the increased deposit or retention, when can I take that? It's all defined here, right? So if I have a question about this, things to note, your property, when you write a property, it's being purchased in its as is present physical condition, right? So everyone says, I want to sell my home as is, or well, your property is actually being sold as is unless something else is coming up, right? Unless they do some type of investigation or they're asking for something, all homes are sold in its as is present physical condition of the date of acceptance. That's when they generally will do investigation of the property, inspections or so forth, to find out if it's actually what they thought it was, right? And then there's a process to go. So if someone says, I want to sell this as is, does that mean can I ask for repairs?
Yeah.
But can I ask for repairs? Yes, 100%, right? Seller can state that all day long, and parties can negotiate. They can still say no, right? But it's an opportunity. That's part of the process. Talks about all of our different contingencies, investigation of property, review of the seller documents, the effects of removal of waiver of contingencies with the offer. Do we, as the broker or agent, ever recommend that our clients remove contingencies, all contingencies?
No.
The answer is never. I agree. Is there a time where it may make sense for our client to remove contingencies?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. So that is a decision that they can make. From an agent perspective, we recommend you always provide some type of protection, right? And it may be that you're purchasing this and going forward to be competitive, to whatever. Maybe it's to go in with a lower offer, right? Hey, I'm going to take it as is. But we always recommend, hey, do investigation, come in there and leave yourself an out just in case you find something that you didn't know about. Items included and excluded. Nowadays, with all the smart home features, right, there's a lot of things that are included that we may not think about. Like, for instance, our smart home light bulbs, right? All kinds of different things that are part of that.
Oh, man, you're gonna have to link all that up to your new internet for the
Yep.
buyer.
So termination rights, there are in some parts, if you're an investor or a foreign investor, there may be some tax withholdings that when this discusses that. Megan's Law, this is something that is included in the offer. We don't go to Megan's Law, but we recommend that our clients do go to Megan's Law to figure out if there's anyone undesirable in their area. Doesn't mean that someone undesirable can't move into their area afterwards. Paragraph 12 is another key paragraph, buyer's investigation of the property. "13, title investing is for our escrow officers and title. Paragraph 14, I would get to know this paragraph, read it in depth, right? Paragraph 14 talks about the investigation, the time periods, the removal of contingencies, and cancellation, right? So how do we cancel the agreement? What are the seller's right to cancel? What are the seller's rights to cancel? When can a seller cancel the agreement on a purchase agreement?
After they sent a notice to perform.
After a notice to perform, right? So they can't just say, all right, I no longer want to sell this property. Sorry, I'm canceling this agreement. Sorry, it doesn't work like that. Right? If they did that, they'd probably be in breach of contract. So this buyer has to not perform in something that they're doing. They didn't submit the deposit. They haven't removed a contingency. They haven't moved to close, all those different things. But first, the seller has to issue a notice of buyer to perform. Repairs. Who can do repairs? Seller can do them, right? Repairs shall be completed prior to final verification of condition unless otherwise agreed. Repairs to be performed at seller's expense may be performed by seller or through others, provided that the work complies with applicable law, including government permits, inspections, and approval requirements. Repairs shall be performed in good, skillful manner with materials of quality and appearance comparable to existing materials. Right? So it's stating right there that the buyer can do it. I'm sorry, the seller can do it, right? Or they can hire someone. If if they are hired, they need to obtain invoices and paid receipts for the repairs performed by others. Final verification of condition. I get this all the time. We want to hold up escrow because buyer hasn't completed their, the seller hasn't completed their repairs. Right? This is not a contingency of the sale. It's strictly to confirm what was done. Right? That's why we do a verification of the premises, the CAR form VP. Bunch of definitions. Liquidated damages. So this is an important one. This is an optional point for our clients to sign. The only thing is if you have multiple buyers and sellers, all parties need to agree or not agree. Right? Should they sign liquidated damages? That's a good question. Should we tell them if they should or shouldn't sign it? No, this is up for them to figure out. Right? If they ask me, here's what Ed says. Well, if a buyer fails to complete this purchase because of the buyer's default, I'm reading it exactly, right? Seller shall retain as liquidated damages the deposits actually paid, right? So what does it mean to me? Well, I'll paraphrase it. It means if they sign this and it's going to be a personal property, that they can't, the seller can't keep more than 3% of the purchase price, but of deposit actually paid. So I put 1% down. I'm in breach of contract. What's at stake?
Well,
1%, right? The deposit actually paid. I'm not saying do or don't. That is they can leave it blank. Right? It's an optional signature for them. They need to discuss whether or not they want to do this or not. I think it generally protects the buyer, but I'm not an attorney. I can't interpret this. Right? Arbitration. Who's been through arbitration or knows what arbitration is? Arbitration, a retired judge or a senior attorney that's designated. Here's a case. It is binding, right? And they hear it. It could be cheaper. It could be more expensive. Could be to their benefit. It could not be for their benefit. That's again a question for their attorney. My attorney, when I was doing an agreement, said don't sign it. I've also had the hey, no problem, doesn't matter. So it really depends on what it is, but all parties need to agree to it or not agree to it. Optional.
Don't the rules of arbitration limit how much attorneys there are or how much?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know. I've never been through that part.
The buyer wants it.
It can be really expensive.
It's a
So
so
There's pros and cons.
yeah, right.
Yeah, the pro is, oh,
Go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, it's always hard to talk on these things. Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
A pro is that you would think that attorneys are wiser than the attorney, or a judge is wiser than a jury who has no idea. And so the idea is that arbitrators can make quicker, better decisions faster, and they have knowledge of what these contracts and knowledge of what's fair. That's the idea. But, it's always subjective because you're dealing with one person versus you go to court and you are, things are handled by your peers. Then it could be 5, your peers could be real estate agents in the audience, or they could be people who don't have any knowledge, hard time reading, hard time understanding complex issues. So that's kind of like what, the idea of arbitration is supposed to be faster, and better sometimes, but it all depends on the person, right? People have biases. And so there's pros and cons.
Good description. Thank you. Amanda.
yeah, so, we're in buyer's agent, buyer wants to sign it, and it goes over. and-
It's a countered item. So the one party agrees, another person does, or other party does not. It's a countered item. They have to agree on it. Right? So if they don't, then that's a term that they would have to resolve before having a ratified agreement. Here it talks about expiration offer, entity buyers. And if they're accepting it, they can accept it a couple different ways. One is just flat outright. They accept it. They could give a seller a counter offer. They could do a backup offer, right? And the seller could also be an entity.
So if you're coming back with a counter offer, you have to check that box.
On the original purchase agreement, yes.
To the buyers.
Yeah, so if you, that's a good point. So if you do not check that box, you accept it, you're accepting this offer, even if you wrote a seller counter offer. You do not check that box, you are essentially accepting, or that your client is accepting the offer as written.
That box has to be checked along with the form.
Correct. Other forms included, the buyer's investigation advisory goes into detail about areas that the buyer should investigate. Fair appraisal. Consumer Privacy Act advisory. We don't sell your information. There's other companies that do. And then depending on what form you have, You may have, if you have an FHA or VA, you may have the amendatory clause. We can get into that. All right. An hour and 40 minutes. See, I have 2 chats that I didn't see. You can only discriminate in 50. Okay, so Deborah, your response, you can only discriminate in a 55 and older, correct? So yeah, I wouldn't use that word, but that's correct. It's a qualification in order to live there you have to be 55 or older to live there. I believe you can actually purchase it if you're, and that I would check specifically, but I think you can purchase it even though you may not be 55, but you can't live there.
Appropriate to say, are you aware that this home is located in a 55 and over neighborhood?
I think it's fair to say that.
Because that's
I've
not
talked,
implying that they're over or under, so.
right, and I've put my foot in my mouth on this one before. I was dealing with a client because
I have too.
I think we all have.
My client said, one of my clients, I thought they were in their 60s, you guys. And one of them said, well, I'm not 55 yet. And then the other one said, well, I'm close to it. I'm going to be turning 55 this year. And I was like, oh my God, I will never bring this up again.
yeah, I had someone in their 40s. I was like, oh. So it's just, yeah. Are you aware that this is a senior community? You have to be 55 years old to live here. Right?
No, it's
You're
more
not
if you're trying to show them. Like, what do you say if you're trying, if you're not
I would
sure?
say that. It's like, yeah. Are you aware that I just go that direction? I would assume I'm going to assume you're 25, but not in an adverse way either. So, any other questions we have? Anything we want to talk about? All right. Well, we're here. If you have any questions, love to see you guys. But thank you guys for. Can you please log your attendance in here, and then Avi, we will send you our attendance in the classroom.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Take care.